Considered also a UAB alumni. I graduated from the university in 2003 with a bachelor's degree in accounting. I enjoy working with startups at different stages with the young generation that are filled with ideas and ambition to disrupt and change the norm, change the process of doing something that we're used to. I am curious by nature, so I like to always be around people who share that curiosity as well. I'm a member in the SME Development Board here in Bahrain, chaired by Ministry of Industry and Commerce and co-chaired by Tim Keen, Economic Development Board and Bahrain Development Bank. Also a founding partner of Gen Bahrain, a local chapter of a global organization that is aimed to sort of shape the ecosystem and the culture of startups here in Bahrain. So I'm here to give you an overview about the startup ecosystem in Bahrain, share with you a couple of interesting facts that could help your journey in product innovation and in shaping your next steps once you graduate. Let me give you an introduction about the Economic Development Board. The EDB is a dynamic public agency chaired by His Royal Highness the Crown Prince. The aim of the organization is to attract and assist companies to set up here in Bahrain. So it's inward FDI attraction into the country. What we do is we help guide companies by giving them advice and information to support their decision-making process. We then help them with facilitating their setup in Bahrain. And then once they set up, we also help them beyond that by aftercare, where we provide ongoing support and answering their inquiries related to their setup and their operation here in Bahrain. We don't do that alone. We do that in collaboration with different organizations and different private and public sector members. The EDB has around 18 different offices scattered around the world, Germany, the Nordics, Japan, here in the GCC, India, all. And their main objective of these offices is to promote Bahrain as an ideal location for company expansions. There are many focus sectors, financial services being one of the top growing sectors for diversification of Bahrain's GDP and attraction of FDI. We've got the manufacturing sector and the logistics, ICT, and tourism. And here I plug in the quote from His Royal Highness Sheikh Salman when he was asked about the future of Bahrain's economy and the 2030 diversification of the GDP. He mentions that the power we must unleash is the power of innovation. We must give the people the tools and resources to succeed. And when oil was discovered in Bahrain back in like 50 years ago or 60 years ago, the country, in order for Bahrain to inject it and benefit from it, the country had to build ports, refineries, and pipelines to be able to extract oil, to enhance it, and feed it into different areas, different countries, and sell it and gather all the benefits to be injected in the economy. So with the power of innovation, the ports are the physical and digital infrastructure asset is going to be the line of credit and support that are given to innovators here in Bahrain. So given that vision and given that push and strategy to unleash innovation, the power and innovation in Bahrain, we built the national aspiration for startups in the kingdom. And that national aspiration is to help companies and individuals start a business frictionless, fail fast, and scale beyond borders. This is extremely important because um, we went through the procedures and the processes of setting up a business. If it was very difficult and cumbersome and expensive, people won't do it. So it had to be frictionless. The systems in the country and the incubators and the support system that you have as a collaborative community needed to help individuals set up something quick, fail fast if they had to, because that's the nature of startups, and innovation comes with trial and error and comes with creating a product, creating a concept, pivoting, and diversion along the line. So you need to, as an entrepreneur, be able to fail fast, not fear fail, and have the opportunity to scale beyond borders. The second aspiration for the startup, the national startup strategy for the country, is to help communities grow, communities that have a positive impact on the economy. And the role of the government here is to actually enable that and not stand in its way, right? So a couple of examples here I can share is when we got to meet Google in one of the events, one of the international events. We got to meet them and we saw how active they were in different communities in the MENA region, such as Egypt and Jordan. And we asked them a question like, why aren't you active in Bahrain? Why aren't you active in the GCC in general, in building communities and community development and skills development? And they were like, well, connect with the locals, but we don't really know how to reach them. So I was like, I'll introduce you to some. And he was like, no, we don't want to work with government officials. We want to work with people on the ground. And I was like, yeah, sure. We believe as a government that our role is to enable innovation, to enable communities. Around 2,500 members on their chapter here, all of which are from different age groups. So we've got members that are 13 years old and members that are within the 60s, all working hand in hand on skills development and reskilling as well, in English and Arabic, on different coding programs. They are called GDG Manama. Take note of that and connect with them on Meetup and connect with them on Instagram. Obviously, because of the current situation, they're not very active in doing events, but they are moving digitally. So you might be able to connect with them online. Moving to the third aspiration is for youth to gain digital skills to shape the future workforce. We've seen the impact of attracting ICT companies and attracting digital and tech startups to Bahrain. Why we're doing what we're doing is because they open up opportunities for the new skills of the future. We no longer anticipate a lot of bankers to be operating, and in all the sectors we've seen, technology plays a major role in advancement, in disruption, in planning. Just a moment, I'll open up the chat so that I can keep up with the questions. So what happens, yes, Nasreen, we find a lot, if not all, focus only on tech startups. Well, through the Startup Bahrain vision and initiative, the focus is on scalable businesses and scalable startups. And usually scale comes with using a technical or a digital element, because what you need and what you can do is grow among different markets, scale faster, hire faster than traditional businesses that would grow from point A to point B by merely just revenue growth and usability. So these are the three aspirations for startup, for the startup movement in Bahrain. Just a moment. Here. And these are the different pillars. So for us to build a startup ecosystem, there had to be many pillars. So the first pillar up above the logo, you can see is community. So how do we build a strong, cohesive, collaborative communities that are available to help you understand a specific skill or understand a specific trend, discuss something? How could we gather like-minded people to have these kind of discussions? So that was the impact and the focus we put together collectively with the community back in 2016, where we met a couple of communities that were active back in 2014. There were a lot of startup evenings and startup mornings and hackathons that were happening, but really, honestly, they were at a very small scale relatively to Bahrain. And we, as a government and as EDB, wanted to put our hands together with them to help amplify that community outreach and increase it and encourage more of such communities to flourish in Bahrain. The second pillar is incubation and acceleration. So great, a person has an idea. Where do they go to incubate it? Where do they go to get mentorship, coaching, and the related skills that is needed to plant the seeds of that idea and help it grow in a safe environment? Acceleration is when the company reaches to a stage of an MVP, a minimum viable product, and needs to accelerate, needs to grow faster. That fast growth usually comes from capital injection, and usually that capital injection comes from an equity investment, and that is what accelerators do. I'll explain to you in details who are the accelerators in Bahrain and what kind of programs they do on a different slide. But let me just go through those pillars quickly. So community, number one, incubation and acceleration. Once you establish a startup, you need to hire the programmers and the developers and the people on your team that will help you grow. Therefore, you need individuals that have that skill set, right? So we work very closely with universities and schools to ensure that entrepreneurship as a basic step is taught in school, is taught in a way that is not just theoretical, but also hands-on. We work very closely with the University of Bahrain, with Dr. Esra and the rest of the faculty to encourage a lot of activity on technopreneurship. Back in the days when I used to work in Zain, I spent 14 years there on product development and value-added services, but the last 4 years I had was in CSR, in corporate social responsibility, and we had a CER objective, which is corporate entrepreneurship responsibility as an organization. And we worked with the University of Bahrain on launching the Zain e-learning center and running a couple of workshops over there back in the days. So the fourth pillar is corporate partnerships. So how do we sustain a community? The government can't be sponsoring and paying for all the activities that are happening in the community. A proper collaboration between the private and public sector is ideal for a sustainable, growing ecosystem. And therefore, much of the work we do at the Startup Bahrain project team is that we work and meet with corporates to understand their innovation strategy and see how we can introduce startups or entrepreneurs to them to build innovative solutions, to help them expedite a specific project, do a prototype, for example, or a proof of concept, and so on. Or simply, we encourage them to sponsor a specific event or specific hackathon, and so on. In terms of funding, of course, funding is a major pillar. It's one of the most important pillars. And funding here comes at different stages because startups have different stages of growth. And there's a need to have the relevant funding per stage. And I'll get into that in more details on another slide. And then the final pillar of the community is policy and regulation. And this is where we come in as the EDB and the whole of Team Bahrain to put our weight against it and support introducing regulations and laws in Bahrain that would facilitate a frictionless startup experience. So this is sort of a summary of why Bahrain is attractive for startups to set up, for us as EDB to attract startups. We've noticed the following. We consider them those 4 Ps, the place, the people, the price, and us being pioneers. The place, Bahrain is a strategic location for providing fast access to a growing market. We have highly qualified ICT infrastructure that allows strong regional and international connectivity, and we are highly connected, and we're a small population, and sometimes small is great, right? So for startups, it's perfect that we're a small market because startups can then test their concept, and once it's proven to be successful, they start exporting that and growing that into larger markets such as Saudi Arabia, for example, and Dubai and the likes. On the people's side, we have skilled young local talent with bilingual capabilities without any restrictions on hiring 100% for our own employees. The quality of life, honestly, is something we've been hearing a lot of positive feedback when we meet international startups. Bahrain has been the #1 choice for expats over 2 years in a row in an international survey that was released. If you are interested in knowing more about those reports, all the reports are available on the EDB website. And then the third purpose is price. The cost of doing business here in Bahrain is significantly more competitive than the rest of the region. And there are many government supports and grants for businesses to set up here in Bahrain. On a pioneer level, we have a track record of innovation, and back when schools started in the GCC, Bahrain was the first to have a school, the first to find oil, and the firsts continue as we move along. So here's also at the bottom, you've got the Team Bahrain members, the Ministry of Industry and Commerce and Tourism, Gen Bahrain, Bahrain Development Bank, Export Bahrain, Startup Bahrain Task Force, Temkeen, and the Economic Development Board. So I'll leave you with this slide to read through it, and this slide summarizes the skill set and the demographic of Bahrain's market, Bahrain's youth segment. We're 51% of Bahrain's population. I'm saying we, wishful thinking of me that I'm considered youth, but youth are 51% of Bahrain's population. Ranks the first in MENA for ICT usage, and Bahrain ranks the first in MENA in ICT development. Bahrain is a leading country in the GCC in digital wallet usage. I'm sure with the COVID situation, that number is even increasing more and more. So this actually shows startups and shows everyone that that the market is ready to adopt new digital platforms and new services and online solutions. So there was also a survey by Ernst & Young back in 2017 that showed that 70% of young Bahrainis are interested in the idea of starting their own business, twice as many as anywhere else in the Gulf. This shows the country, the people's drive and passion to start something new. We are the first in the MENA on the Global Human Capital Index. That's another slide to share to show the talents available in the country, the graduates of universities, the languages they are skilled at and capable of. These are all extremely important data that is extremely important for investors and companies that want to come and set up their Middle East operations to be based here in Bahrain, because they can now find local talent that can be employed by them upon their setup. So as mentioned, both the public and private sector is committed to developing tech skills. Let us just a moment, I'll take a quick break and ask. Which report is this information? Do you mean this report? The sources are written at the bottom of the slide. I hope you can see it. It's the Higher Education Council in 2017, Bahrain Polytechnic and the Google Developers Group shared those information. So the public and private sectors are committed to develop tech skills here in the country. And there are 300 graduates in technology majors in Bahrain Polytechnic. Zain has programs to train and teach tech skills for females. UOB launched the Blockchain Academy and the Coding Academy. The World Economic Forum is launching the Skill Gap Accelerator, with Bahrain having access to it. There are a couple of different community platforms like Startup Grind, Google Developers Group, Injaz, Think Smart, the FinTech Consortium Institute, BIBF, are all organizations providing hands-on training, experience to skill and upskill local talents. So going back to our startup ecosystem pillars, and let's now go through them in details. Remember when I mentioned that there are different stages for startups? So at first you start with your idea, and that's what we call pre-startup. Pre-startup is when you have an idea, you're building the concept. Right before you commit to it, you are at the pre-startup stage. So you have a vision, you have a mission, you have an idea, a concept. That honestly is the longest stage you're ever going to be in. And in my experience, I've seen people spend a few years actually in building the right concept and the right vision for their ideas. Putting their thoughts into a workable solution is something that takes a lot of time, and you need the power of the community, and you need to communicate with like-minded people to validate your idea. You need to communicate with mentors and coaches and other startups who failed and probably failed miserably, right? They will be your best teachers, because they will tell you what you don't need to reinvent the wheel, and they can share with you those kind of experiences of what not to do and how not to go about a specific concept. You need to do a lot of research, a lot of consultation, a lot of asking to make sure that this idea is unique. This idea has the ability to scale. this idea is feasible and would actually stand a chance in the market, in the local, regional, or global market, all depending on what you aim to do and what your vision and mission is. Point zero is when you are committed. When you are committed with time, with money, with setting up your CR, this is where we consider you as a startup. So in Startup Bahrain, sorry, this is just this. Let me, okay, fine. Startups in Bahrain is on the Startup Bahrain database are startups that are committed, so therefore they have a CR. They are trying to validate their concept and ready to scale. So they are in this phase. Okay, and this also could take between 1 to 3 years, honestly. What minimum viable product is when you are trying to create a workable solution, a prototype, validating it with clients, with building a proof of concept with corporates or with potential clients, and so on. For that stage, there are a couple of places you could go to get support. Once you have your product market fit done, you then need to grow and scale, right? And that is your growth stage, where you are now hiring more people, you're adding new customers, you are growing beyond your geographies, beyond your geography here in Bahrain. That's where you start to scale. And then in the country, you've got a lot of platforms and organizations that could help you grow. Here's a snapshot of the startup ecosystem in Bahrain. I'm looking at the left side of this presentation, where we have 186 plus startup founders, 75 of which are Bahraini, 36 females on the database of Startup Bahrain, 134 active startups, around 18, 19 of them are scaling beyond the borders, and 41 startups, international startups, moved into Bahrain to set up their operations. Around 958 employees work in startup full-time. There are multiple of roadshows, events, and activities that are happening in the country. Now, this slide, I'm gonna have a look at this slide and go through the different entities. So let's start with startups in the highlight. So here are a couple of logos of startups that are in Bahrain. I hope that you know many of them. If not, and if you'd like to know what Majra does, for example, or Mala'ib, or Skiplino, Baqala, ML app, for example, these are just a few of the startups on the platform. Have a look at them on startupbahrain.com. There's a link to their companies. We feature them every now and then. We share their success stories on different social media channels. So it's really interesting to keep yourself aware of what's going on and who's who in the ecosystem, because you can reach out to them to support you on your business plans. So in terms of incubators and accelerators, there's Brink, the Collective Hub, Brilliant Lab, Fashion Incubator, Flat 6 Labs, and FinTech Bay. In terms of funding, these are some of the angel investors, grants available, and VCs. In terms of corporates, these are a few of the corporates that showed extreme and direct interest in supporting startup initiatives. On the co-working spaces, a few over here, and then with some of the events that are happening that you should know about and you should sign up to attend, hopefully when all the COVID madness ends. let's get into the details of it. So this is an extremely important slide for you, because at your stage, I'm assuming that you may have an idea of a company or a business or a product that will disrupt a specific industry or will introduce something new, and you want to test it and you want to validate it. This is where you go to validation. You go to co-working spaces. You meet with like-minded people. You just, even if you don't actually have a solid idea, just go for inspiration, meet with them. Space 340 has 2 locations in Bahrain. You can sign up and become a member and get access to their event space, their meeting rooms, internet, refreshments, and hot desks to work from, to study from as well. Brink Batelco also provides co-working. Fab Lab, Bahrain FinTech Bay, CoLab is opening very, very soon. Poke Cafe, funny enough, it's a restaurant in Hamala, in Hamala, and provides high-speed internet, coffee refreshments, and hot desks for you to use and to work from. The Collective Hub as well in Adliya in the terminal building. So once you have an idea, remember the stages. Once you have an idea and you are ready and committed to make it happen, you go then to an incubator to set up. The incubator will provide you with hot desks for really competitive prices. There are around 28 incubators in Bahrain, all of which are listed on the Startup Bahrain website. They provide more or less the same services. So they provide you with a desk, they provide you with access to mentors and some communal activities. But on this slide, I plugged for you what will take you to the next step. So stage 1, with an idea, you go to a co-working space. Stage 2, where you want to establish and you want to validate your concepts, you go to an incubator. Stage 3 is when you have a concept, when you have a bit of traction, you have a bit of revenue, you then want to get the necessary skills to scale faster and to grow, to accelerate. This is where you go to. So this is stage 3. You go to an accelerator to get funding, to get introduction to corporates. You go to an accelerator to get an investment of equity. So what accelerators do is that they pay money to become shareholders in your company. So here's a list of the accelerators in Bahrain. Brink Batelco is an accelerator. It focuses on the Internet of Things, so IoT, which are gadgets, sensors, that touch all lifestyle elements we have, whether it's agri-tech, whether it's health tech, edu-tech, and honestly, any kind of gadget, any kind of sensory that needs to be plugged into a device. If you have that thought and that idea that you want to connect things together, you go to Brink for their experience. They've accelerated 12 startups. They've got 15 co-workers just established there and 14 different business partners. Flat 6 Labs is also an accelerator. They don't have a specific sector that they focus on. I've seen startups go to them that have a fashion line that wanted to sort of scale and accelerate in different markets. I've seen platforms for education. I've seen fintech services, all with Flat 6 Labs. They have 6 locations in the MENA region. So they've got an office in Abu Dhabi, in Jeddah, in Lebanon, and Egypt, of course, and here in Bahrain. They have mentored over 100 companies. They've got in their database over 200 mentors from Bahrain and the region, and many business partners that will help open doors for you. They have 18 ecosystem partners, and they invest in shares in your company. Bahrain FinTech Bay is also an accelerator and an ecosystem player. They focus on financial technologies. So if you have a platform that would use, for example, big data or machine learning and want to sort of create a product or a service that will be used by banks, by insurance companies, by government entities or regulators, you go to FinTech Bay because they have 5 locations worldwide. So there is a FinTech Bay in Singapore, there is a FinTech Bay in Detroit, there's a FinTech Bay in Silicon Valley, in Jordan, and here in Bahrain as well. If you're into fashion and you want to use your skills to build a brand for yourself, to learn specific skills, you go to the Bahrain Fashion Incubator. They've got 19 current participants in their pre-incubation program. They've got courses for graduates. They've got different consultation services that all fall within the fashion industry. So it's not necessarily only for you to create and learn how to sketch or learn how to do the patron. It's also for you to use the latest technologies in fashion design. I've seen them work on jewelry items. I've seen them use 3D machines and laser cuts in building a lot of the accessories on the dress. I've seen a young lady from Lebanon create a skirt that was 3D printed here in Bahrain. In Lebanon. I've seen a lady in Bahrain that created a abaya, a black, abaya that cools your body temperature by 10 degrees because she used this specific fabric and coated it with the nano film that reduces body heat. So say, for example, it's 50 degrees outside. If you wear her abaya, all you're going to feel is the temperature being 40 degrees. Isn't that great for Bahrain? The Collective Hub is a new accelerator, a new platform to connect investors, angel investors, and startups here in the country, and provides access, mentorship, and training programs for aspiring investors. They've invested in 2 local startups in 2020. I think the most compelling startup that they've exited from is Eat App. Have you guys heard of Eat App? It's a restaurant booking application, extremely big in the UAE, Bahraini founder, and they have a track record, mashallah, over here. So let's move on to the next slide, which shows you the funding available for startups at different stages. So with accelerator funding, you've got, as mentioned, they invest in equity. So they take shares in your company, provided, and they provide you with cash to support your startup. There are government grants as well. That is, for example, the MVP stipends that was presented by Temkeen. There are microfinancing schemes, Tamweel, Tamweel Plus, and Mashroui. So Mashroui here, I know most of you might have heard about it, and I hope many of you sign up for it. Mashroui is a great example of where you go in with an idea and you get the right mentorship, you get the right skill sets and the right exposure for you to validate your idea and launch it. So you get cash prizes, and that would help fund your early stage idea and getting you into the startup scene. Angel investment, which are important in this ecosystem because they provide the early on cash injection in your startup to help push you to your next stage. They believe in the team. They believe in your promise of a future growth. They don't need you to have a growing business. They just need to believe in your vision, in your charisma, in your personality, and you need to show projections of growth, and they'll sort of invest in equity in your company. On the venture capital side, these are the VCs that have established here in Bahrain. And honestly, they are for the later stage. So once you have a company, once you have a track record in clients and consumers, and you're ready to move into Series A and Series B, that's where you get in VC investments. The last but not least is a source of liquidity for many startups is to list themselves in the investment market. So there is in Bahrain, Bourse, a secondary market called Bahrain Investment Market. They provide a deregulated platform for smaller businesses that want to list themselves and gain liquidity. Let me tell you about, on this slide, I'm going to talk to you about the regulatory sandbox that was launched in Bahrain. Regulatory sandbox is sort of a safe environment for those of you who want to test a fintech concept, test a solution or a service that could appeal to the financial service companies. They can sign up to the regulatory sandbox. And what that gives them is access to a sort of a platform where they can test their concept on around 100 users, validate it, and then by the end of that 9-month period of testing, they graduate with the right regulation from the Central Bank of Bahrain, and they start operating here in the country. So we've got 4 approved, these are all the approved companies that joined the sandbox. Some of them are Bahrain based, some of them are international, wanting to come and explore the market. 4 of which have graduated. Rain, for example, is a Bahrain-based crypto asset exchange platform. Tarabut Gateways uses open banking and is in collaboration with NBB to launch in the country. There's Arabian Chain Technology and Belfrix. The current number of candidates is 32, and as mentioned, 4 of them have graduated, so the total number that entered into the sandbox was 36. So is that all? Is it really when I have an idea, I just can go to an incubator or an accelerator? No, we encourage you to attend events. You need to know about what's going on in Bahrain. There's a lot of guest speakers flying in. There's a lot of momentum happening from different angles and at different stages will help you shape your awareness of what's going on. So there's the Fantastic Week, the Google Dev Fest, AWS hackathons, the MENA Angel Investor Summit, Meshroui, as we discussed, hackathons happening at the universities, the Global Entrepreneurship Week. I look forward to it on a yearly basis. It takes place in November every year between the 18th and 24th. It's a global entrepreneurship week, which Temkeen takes the lead on spearheading a series of many events that tackle entrepreneurship at different stages and at different angles. And then there's the AWS Startup Day. Obviously, it's going to be tech focused. All of the information I shared with you guys is available on the Startup Bahrain community website. So startupbahrain.com gives you access to news and features about startups, about the community events, who's who in the ecosystem, and why should startups set up in the country. A new page that was recently launched was Perks. That gives you exclusive value and offers for you as a startup. There are many FAQs and policies and regulations available for you to read and learn about so that you can start quickly and connect with the right people faster. So here you go. It's startupbahrain.com. This is my email, pakiza@startupbahrain.com.